Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be going over both the early slate and the main slate on DraftKings for Wednesday, July the 25th. We do have a big early slate today. We have an 8-game early slate, and then we have a 4-game night slate. I'll be looking at both, talk about my 5 plays for both slates. I do have my 5 plays already plugged in. I will tell you why I chose these guys, talk about the other pitchers I like, talk about why I chose the 2 pitchers that I did. Then we'll talk about the stacks and the BVP plays, talk about some of my favorite hitters on both the early and main slate for today. But before we do get started, guys, make sure you drop a like on the video. I would definitely appreciate it. If you are new to the channel and you have not clicked that subscribe button yet, make sure you subscribe down below so that way you will not miss out on any of my new videos. But pitcher on this 8-game early slate, we do only have one option that is over $10,000 on DK. That is Trevor Bauer. He's going to be facing the Pirates at home, $13,400. Then after Bauer, it drops down to Freddie Peralta. Then you have other 9K, 8K, 7K guys. There are a lot of mid-tier plays on this early slate. Bauer's really our only stud option. And I think Bauer is a guy that we can pay up for on this early slate. The Pirates, this matchup with the Pirates, I would say it's not a great matchup. Definitely not a matchup, though, that I'm scared of. Bauer is such a good pitcher. He can go into this matchup and have some success. This dude just has such good strikeout stuff. He's a great pitcher when it comes to Ks. He can get you at least 6-7 strikeouts per game. Even if he gives up a couple runs, the Ks are usually going to be there for Bauer. If we look at the implied run total and projected lineup for the Pirates, a 3.8 implied run total. Like I said, this isn't a team that strikes out much, but you do have some Ks, especially towards the bottom there. I really like Bauer here. I think he's the top stud on this slate. Just has so much upside. I think it does make sense to fade Bauer today if you want to do that in tournaments because there are a lot of good mid-tier plays. I don't know really where you're going to want to spend up at hitter, though. That's kind of why I went with Bauer, just because there aren't really any expensive hitters that I love on this slate. Like the Indians are expensive, and they're facing Tyon, so I don't know if that's that good of a spot if I really want to jam them in. The highest run total is the Cardinals at 5 runs, and there aren't really many expensive bats in the Cardinals lineups that we have to have pretty much besides Matt Carpenter. So like I said, guys, there's really not any expensive hitters I'm trying to jam in, so it doesn't really make much sense to go cheap at pitcher. But if you just want to be different in tournaments, I do see that. But for like cash games, I would definitely play Bauer today. And then the pairing that I like to go with Bauer is Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray is very cheap. He's only $7,300. And this is a matchup where Robbie Ray does have some upside. The Cubs do strike out versus lefties. We saw what Patrick Corbin did to them. Corbin had a great game against the Cubs. And I could easily see Robbie Ray doing really well here versus the Cubs. We look at the projected lineup for the Cubs. Look at their run total. Do not have any Vegas information on this game as I'm recording this video, but if you look at the projected lineup, there are definitely some strikeouts in this lineup, especially with guys like Ian Happ, who is in the projected lineup. He will strike out a lot, especially versus lefties. Baez, a great hitter, a ton of power, but definitely some Ks there. Jason Hayward has an increased K rate versus lefties. Rizzo will strike out more versus lefties than he does against righties. Robbie Ray, we know, is a great strikeout pitcher. I really like Robbie Ray here. I just think he has a lot of upside, and he's very cheap as well at $7,300. I believe if you pair him and Bauer together, that still leaves you pretty good salary. I think it leaves you like $3,800 for bats, which definitely can be worked around today. There's just a lot of value at hitter that I like to where I can pay up for pitcher. But if you wanted to get off of Bauer and go to like 2 mid-tier arms, I think obviously Robbie Ray is a really good option in the mid-tier. You could play a guy maybe like Danny Duffy. He's $7,700, gets a matchup with the Tigers. I do really like Castellanos today. He's obviously in my 5 plays, but if you weren't going to like play any Detroit bats, Danny Duffy been improving lately, $7,700. You could go to him if you're looking to go sort of two mid-tier arms. You got Freddie Peralta, who's shown a lot of strikeout ability this year. Don't love that matchup with the Nationals, but if you're just trying to get off of Bauer, that chalk that I imagine Bauer's going to be, you could go to like Freddie Peralta. The value at pitcher, you got like Clayton Richard, who you could consider. He's down here at $6,200. We know lefties versus the Mets, or left-handed pitchers versus the Mets is something we want to do. Richard's not a guy I play much, but in this matchup and with that price tag, I think it does make sense if you want to go down to him. But those are the pitchers I'm really on today, the ones I like. Now we will talk about the bats. Starting off at second base, went with Whit Merrifield here, $4,100. He gets a matchup with Matt Boyd that I do really like. Matt Boyd is not a pitcher that I'm really scared to take bats against, and especially with a guy like Merrifield who has had success versus Matt Boyd. Whit Merrifield hits lefties well. In the past, he's gone 7 for 16 with 4 extra base hits versus Matt Boyd. Like I said, Merrifield just hits lefties well. He's got a lot of upside. He's got some decent power if he gets on base. he will steal bases as well. And at 4,100, definitely a good mid-tier play that I do like at second base. And then in the outfield, Nick Castellanos, I mentioned how I really like him today. If you're not going to play Danny Duffy, I think Castellanos makes a ton of sense here. I actually think he's a really good tournament play because I feel like people will be playing Danny Duffy today. So you can gain some leverage on the field by going with Castellanos. This guy that has a lot of power versus lefties. Danny Duffy will definitely give up home runs to righties. If there's anything that Duffy struggles with or has struggled with this year, it is right-handed hitters. Castellanos also has BVP versus Duffy, going 10 for 33 with 2 home runs. Really like Castellanos, 4,100. That seems like a little bit too cheap of a price, especially for this matchup. And then lastly, Marcell Ozuna at 3,500 is a value play I like in the outfield. I do really like the Cardinals. I think they're probably the top stack on this slate. And if you want to go cheap at pitcher, you want to play 2 mid-tier arms and pay up for guys like Matt Carpenter. Yadier Molina's been hitting the ball well lately. Paul DeJong. If you want to fit these guys in, I think it does make sense today. They could definitely score runs versus Romano. Romano's not a pitcher I believe in. This is a great hitter's park. It's going to be pretty hot, 83 degrees, some good hitting weather. Love the Cards today. And Marcell Ozuna batting right in the middle of that lineup. Should be batting cleanup at 3,500. Really good value option if you're trying to find a cheap value play in the outfield. But yeah, guys, these are my 5 plays for the early slate. Trevor Bauer, Robbie Ray, Whit Merrifield, Nick Castellanos, and Marcell Ozuna. We'll quickly go over stacks and BVP plays on the early slate before moving on to the main slate. So I did mention the Cardinals. They're the top stack, in my opinion, on this early slate. Guys like Matt Carpenter, Yadier Molina, DeJong, Ozuna, Jorko fan, this lineup's in play for me, top to bottom. And then looking at other stacks that we could possibly consider, really isn't much I love besides the Cardinals. I do like the Royals versus Matt Boyd, but I'm definitely not stacking the Royals just because I really don't need to. Just because not a lot of good hitters in this lineup. But definitely like some one-offs here with Whit Merrifield, Salvador Perez, maybe even Bonifacio. Those are kind of the guys I'm focused on for the Royals. But yeah, let's move on to BVP. There's a lot of BVP plays on this early slate. We'll just cover the ones with a decent sample size so we can get through this somewhat quickly. So starting off, a lot of these Tigers have hit Danny Duffy well. I mentioned Castellanos BVP. Jose Iglesias has also hit him well, going 9 for 25. And Victor Martinez has gone 16 for 42 with 3 home runs versus Danny Duffy. Alcides Escobar, Merrifield, and Moustakas have all hit Matt Boyd well. Escobar has gone 8 for 21. I mentioned Merrifield's BVP earlier, and Mike Moustakas 6 for 18 with a home run versus Matt Boyd. AJ Pollock gone 5 for 15 versus John Lester. And I believe that is it for the early slate. There are some 4 o'clock games, but we won't cover those. We'll just look at the early and the main slate. So that's it for BVP on the early slate. We'll go ahead and move on to this 4-game night slate. Talk about my 5 plays for the night slate. Talk about the slate in general, the pitchers, and the bats we want to target. So looking at pitcher for tonight, this 4-game slate, it's pretty gross. Don't have a lot of intriguing options. The only option we have over 10K is Tyler Skaggs, who is 10,200, getting a matchup with the White Sox. Then you have David Price at 9,500 facing the Orioles. Charlie Morton's going to be pitching in Coors Field. Not really sure if we want to go there, but he is discounted. He's 8,800. Then you got Edwin Jackson and Martin Perez pitching in Texas, where I don't want to target pitchers. John Gray's facing the Astros in Coors. I don't think I want to go there. James Shields that has a matchup with the Angels. I'm not playing James Shields. And I mentioned Perez. Dylan Bundy's facing the Red Sox, and that's a really tough matchup. So Tyler Skaggs and David Price are really the only 2 guys I like on this 4-game night slate. Skaggs gets a matchup with the White Sox, a matchup that I do like. This White Sox team definitely has a lot of strikeouts in their lineup. Skaggs does feel like the safest option on this 4-game slate, so if you were playing on FanDuel or something, I would recommend just playing Skaggs as your pitcher. Even though he's sort of expensive on DK, I think he's worth the salary just because pitcher is really gross on this night slate. Then David Price, he's facing the Orioles. We know we're going to love that matchup. The Orioles are not a good team. They don't have Manny Machado. Even though they do have some power bats that can hit lefties well, like Adam Jones, Valencia do have power versus the lefties, they will still strike out a lot. There are a ton of Ks in this lineup. It is going to be raining. It looks like there's going to be some weather here. If the weather's really bad and we have to get off of David Price and we just have to consider someone else, then I would say go Skaggs and Morton. Morton would probably be my next favorite option if I couldn't play David Price due to weather. But right now, recording this video the night before, just going to stick with David Price. We really don't know much about the weather the night before. But yeah, that's really it for pitcher, guys. Now we will talk about the bats. I think the bats are where we're really going to want to focus in on this slate. We have a 6 implied run total for the Rangers, a 6.2 for the Athletics, a 12 total in that game. We know we're going to want bats there. Righties from the Athletics, I think, are great plays. Lefties and righties from the Rangers, I think, are good plays as well. The Angels have a 5.2 implied run total versus James Shields. We're definitely going to want some Angels in our lineups. You got a 5.1 implied run total for the Rockies versus Morton. Don't know if I want to consider the Rockies, but the Astros have a 5.5 implied run total versus Gray. And I think some of the Astros can definitely be in play. But this Oakland-Texas game is where I'm really focused on. Just 2 bad pitchers that I don't believe in, Edwin Jackson and Martin Perez. So I went with a little mini stack here of Texas. I'm definitely going to have more Texas bats in my full lineup. But starting off with Joey Gallo and Rougned Odor, these are 2 guys that I really like from Texas, 2 guys that have a ton of power. Edwin Jackson will give up some home runs. This isn't a pitcher I believe in. The dude's like 80 years old. Really don't even know how he's still pitching in the league. In this 100-degree heat, I feel like Edwin Jackson's going to really struggle. So I love like Chu, Odor, Andrus Beltre. Guzman's cheap if you need value. You got Joey Gallo, Chirinos. Just a lineup that has a ton of power, a ton of upside. In this heat, this hitting environment, should be a ton of runs scored, and I really like Gallo and Odor. Both great plays from that Texas lineup. And then Cole Calhoun, really good value option, only 3,600. He should be leading off versus James Shields, and I do really like that matchup for Cole Calhoun. James Shields is just not a good pitcher. I don't believe in him. He's still a pitcher that I do want to pick on, especially with a guy like Calhoun who does have power versus righties, who has upside. Definitely will steal some bases. Calhoun does have speed. Just has a lot of upside in this spot in general, and he's very cheap at 3,600. So if I'm looking for a cheap plays in the outfield, which I kind of am, since I went Skaggs and Price and I spent a lot of money spent a lot of salary at pitcher, I'm gonna need the value at hitter. That's where I kind of look to Calhoun, who is a good value play in the outfield. But yeah, guys, these are my 5 plays for the night slate: Tyler Skaggs, David Price, Joey Gallo, Rougned Odor, and Cole Calhoun. Now we'll go over the stacks and BVP plays that I like on this 4-game night slate before we get out of here. So definitely the top stacks for me, I would say the Rangers are number 1, the Athletics are number 2. Just that game in general, I'm going to be focused on pretty much till this series is over. I feel like there's going to be runs scored every night there. And if you're wanting to get away from that chalk, which I imagine going to be very chalky, that game in general, definitely look to the Angels versus James Shields. Should be lower owned compared to that game. And you do have upside here with guys like Calhoun, Trout, Upton, Pujols, Ohtani. I do like the Angels lineup as well. But yeah, moving on to BVP. Looking at the BVP plays on this 4-game night slate, I actually do have a lot of them. I'll just cover the ones with about a 20 at-bat sample. So starting off, Danny Valencia, he's really hit David Price well, going 15 for 25. Andrew Benintendi's gone 8 for 23 with a home run versus Dylan Bundy. And Mookie Betts gone 7 for 29 with 3 home runs versus Bundy. Let's see here. Chris Davis, 8 for 18 with 2 home runs versus Martin Perez. Jed Lowry, 11 for 29 versus Martin Perez. Josh Plegley, doubt he'll be in the lineup, but he's gone 5 for 13 versus Martin Perez. Adrian Beltre, 6 for 14 versus Edwin Jackson. And Sin-Soo Choo, 11 for 28 versus Jackson. Ian Desmond, 4 for 11 versus Morton. Cargo's gone 7 for 21 with a home run versus Charlie Morton. And Gerardo Parra, 4 for 16 with a home run versus Charlie Morton. And then lastly, 2 Angels bats have done well against James Shields. Ian Kinsler gone 16 for 67 with 4 home runs. And Mike Trout gone 3 for 11 with 2 home runs versus James Shields. But yeah, that's it for BVP, guys, on this 4-game night slate. And I think that is it for the video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. Hopefully it did help you. If you didn't enjoy the vid, just make sure you click that like button before you get out of here. If you have not subscribed yet, make sure you do subscribe down below. And if you have any questions, you can always hit me up on Twitter at the DFS_GOAT, or feel free to leave a comment down below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And good luck tonight on both slates, guys. Peace.